Thank you once again for joining us. My name is Marie Yambo. Our social media handles at Marie Yambo and at KBC Channel 1 on Twitter. On Facebook, it's KBC Channel 1 TV. Would like to hear from you. You can interact with us from now on. Now, it is known as the silent killer for a good reason. Why? Because it shows no symptoms, and most adults in Kenya do not even know about their status. What are we talking about? High blood pressure. And what do the numbers 120/80 mean? Well, to talk to us about high blood pressure is none other than Dr. Nicola Okech, who is an endocrine specialist. Thank you so much, Dr. once again for gracing our program once again. I know we were with you the other time. We were talking about type 2 diabetes and how it can be put into remission. But today we want to talk about high blood pressure. First and foremost, how bad is the situation? Because as we've put it, most Kenyan adults, if I may put it that way, are unaware that they could actually be having high blood pressure.
Okay, so the numbers are actually very startling. What we do know, according to the studies that have been done locally, is about 25 to 30% of our population has high blood pressure. But that is also most likely an underestimation because, as we said, most people don't know that they have high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you know, this word high blood pressure, I think it's been thrown around. Oh, I have high blood pressure, What does it really mean to have high blood pressure? Yeah.
So basically, when you have high blood pressure, it just means that the tension within the major blood vessels is high. Okay, and this high tension can lead to problems or affect your major organs. In this case, we will be talking more of the brain, the heart, and the kidneys. But of course, we know there are other organs that might be affected by very high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. And just like you've rightly put it, the tension in the blood vessels, which can affect the most important organs in your body. So does it mean that the tension is such that these organs don't receive enough blood? What really happens such that, things like stroke can happen or even a heart attack?
Just as you said, the high blood pressure or the tension within the vessels does not allow these critical organs to receive enough blood supply. And as we know, the brain, the heart, the kidneys are very important in our life, okay? So if these areas are not receiving enough blood supply, then their function is obviously compromised.
Mm-hmm. We'll be getting to the issue of what actually causes high blood pressure, all to do with lifestyle, weight, and all that. But just before we talk about that, 120/80 has always been deemed as the healthy, level for you to be, healthy in terms of not having high blood pressure. Why is that so?
So whenever we are talking about high blood pressure, if a patient or if you diagnose high blood pressure in a patient, it means that this high level of pressure within the blood is a level at which they can develop complications. In our setting, we usually approach high blood pressure as anything above 140/90, but what we do know is that between 130 and 139/80 to 89, that is what is referred to as pre-hypertension. So that just means that you're on the borderline. Most people will say niko hapo kwa borderline. So it just means that you're just approaching hypertension. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and that's you've rightly put it, a certain number over. So can you just break it down for us? What is I don't want to use the scientific terms, but the number above and then the number below, what do they really mean? And which one should somebody pay more attention to?
So both of them are important. So the number above is what we call the systolic blood pressure, and that is the pressure when the heart is squeezing itself to pump out blood. Okay, so that is the pressure that is recorded within the bloodstream. The lower number is called the diastolic blood pressure, and that is when the heart is relaxing to allow filling of the heart with blood so that it can get ready to pump.
Okay. So now let's delve into the causes of high blood pressure. I know, having talked to a few doctors here and there, sometimes you're told that really there's no, or sometimes it's very difficult to tell what the cause of high blood pressure could be. But what are some of the factors that can lead to high blood pressure?
Okay, so in the medical fraternity, we usually classify high blood pressure or hypertension into two. It can be either primary or secondary. So the primary hypertension is one where you cannot really find the cause. Secondary hypertension just means it is secondary to something else, okay? In all kinds of lifestyle diseases, we always approach them in two ways, because we know there's the genetics of it, and then there's the environmental influence of our lifestyle, okay? So some people are just genetically predisposed. You'll find people saying, in my family, there are people who have high blood pressure. So whenever we are taking a patient history, we always ask, is there a history of high blood pressure in your family, particularly in your first degree relatives, okay? So that would be your parents or siblings, okay? But even extended can also count, okay? So when we are approaching secondary hypertension, it means then that there's something else that leads into that hypertension. And if you correct that cause, then the hypertension also is corrected. So in this case, then we would think about things like thyroid disorders, okay? Abnormalities in the formation of some of the major blood vessels. Some hormonal disorders also lead to hypertension. Yes, and then of course, when we're talking about the environment, our lifestyle, okay? So people who are overweight or obese would be at a higher chance of getting hypertension, as well as people who have other lifestyle diseases. So whenever a patient comes to you and they have things like diabetes, you always have to screen and make sure that they don't have hypertension, because they tend to go hand in hand.
And weight seems to be the biggest risk, really. And maybe that is why sometimes you need to pay more attention that when you're pushing weight loss, it's not necessarily, aesthetic part of it, but it has to do with the fact that if that weight stays up, then your risk of developing hypertension is very high. And just like you said in our previous program, that it is so much about the fat that surrounds the organs. And so that is what actually now puts you at risk. Does age really matter? Does when you're talking about, because we'll be delving into how can you reverse hypertension, but how does age play when it comes to hypertension?
So the older you get, the older your organs get. And the older you get, the more stiff your blood vessels get. So the stiffer your blood vessels, the more likely you are to get high blood pressure. So that's why the incidence of high blood pressure is higher as someone grows older. Yes. Okay.
So somebody is asking, I've changed probably my lifestyle and all this. Can I put it into remission, or can I reverse hypertension?
You can reduce your pressures. Let me say you can reduce your pressures, okay? We usually stage levels of hypertension. So there is mild, moderate, and severe. So you can actually move from severe to moderate, or moderate to mild, and even from mild to normal, okay? With every 1 kilogram loss in weight, there is a 5 millimeter reduction in the levels of your pressure. So the more kilograms you lose, the more your pressure falls down.
Okay. So does it mean then you're likely to be off the medication, if possible, then as long as you maintain a healthy lifestyle? Yes. You're able to put your high blood pressure medication?
Yes. But just as I mentioned, that is more common in those who have the milder levels of hypertension. For someone who has severe hypertension, it's usually very difficult to get off medication, because it might take a while before you can reverse from blood pressure of 200/100 back to a normal of 120/70. Okay, so but for someone who has a blood pressure of say 140/90, it's easier for them with the lifestyle changes to come closer to 120/70. But as I mentioned, even in the previous program, for patients who've had complications, you've had a stroke, or you've had a heart attack, what we call myocardial infarction, those patients cannot reverse, they cannot get off medications.
And then I was just thinking about when you're talking about, putting, okay, I don't want to say the into remission, but you've just explained that not everybody would be a candidate for it because it depends on other complications that you may have, including genetic. Yes. That's, if it's genetic, then chances are very high that you might not be able to actually reverse it or put it into remission. But then again, I've always had people being told like, oh, don't take too much salt, especially for those who either have high blood pressure, although it can be healthy, but no, don't take too much salt, you might just get hypertension. What is the relationship between salt and hypertension?
So salt, we know the chemical name is sodium chloride, okay? So sodium within the blood vessels pulls a lot of fluid, and that fluid causes a lot of tension in the walls of the blood vessels. That's why we always ask our patients or the population in general to limit the amount of salt that they take, because of the effect of sodium.
Okay. Okay, I would have asked, I don't know why it's always like table salt. Don't add, is it because food is you've already put salt in the food, in the kitchen, so you shouldn't actually add more salt? Or is it a matter of the table salt itself, which you're adding, which means it's not really cooked? Is there a difference there?
So it's usually what you add at the table. Because most of the time when we are doing the cooking, we do put in a bit of salt. Yeah. So the thing is not to add more at the table. We limit the salt intake to 2 grams per day. That is the acceptable level, and that usually happens when you're in the cooking process. So no need to add anything else.
2 grams per day. Yeah. But I can bet that is not what really happens. Yes. Because in most cases, we don't monitor our salt intake in the sense of you think if I avoid the table salt, but probably if you're taking your snacks, chances are very high that they have salt. Let's say it's crisps or something like that. So is that also part of you monitoring the 2 grams you're talking about? Yes. Because if I took my breakfast, maybe there's something I ate there, maybe eggs had salt. Then maybe at break time I took crisps. Then lunchtime I ate my normal food, probably it has salt. So it needs to actually be cumulative. Yes, it's cumulative. Okay. At what age do we really need to pay attention to high blood pressure, monitoring our high blood pressure?
So I would say at any age, because high blood pressure can even happen in children. If you're talking about abnormalities in the formation of the blood vessels. However, we know that once someone hits the age of 40, the aging process, of course, is already taking place. So those ones should be screened, as well as those with a family history of high blood pressure. But what I would encourage the population is just go for your wellness screen, because we can't say that these are hard and fast rules. People are different. I may tell you at 40 years start measuring, but you actually have high blood pressure when you're 20 years old. So wellness screening is one thing that we need to encourage our population to continuously take up. Okay. Yes.
And then what are the dangers then, like we said when we began the program, that most adults have hypertension, but it has not been diagnosed yet. So what are the dangers of undiagnosed hypertension?
So complications, and in this we are talking about complications to do with the brain, so strokes, to do with the eyes, blindness, to do with the heart would be heart failure or heart attacks, to do with the kidneys would be kidney failure. So those are the major organs that we are focusing on. Yes. Okay.
Now, in this case, I think you'll just take us through, how to measure your, what is it called? How to take your blood pressure, especially for somebody who wants to do it at home. Sometimes people say, oh, you need to sit. Some people will tell you, no, you can lie down. But what is the correct way of taking your pressure, especially if you're going to do it at home? Because in the hospital, it's automatic. You'll have to sit.
Okay. So the person needs to be ideally relaxed. You can't have come from an argument and then have your blood pressure checked. So you need to be completely relaxed in a quiet room, preferably, and then seated on the chair upright with your back supported, okay? and then your feet must be flat on the ground, okay? Precautions that you should advise the person to do is, one, empty the bladder, so they should be able to void. They should not have drunk any caffeine-related drinks, so coffee, tea, energy drinks, it's a no-no, okay? And then when you're actually doing the blood pressure, they should not be talking, because all these things affect the blood pressure reading, okay? One high blood pressure reading, depending on the level that it is not enough to make a diagnosis of high blood pressure. You need at least 3 high readings in different settings, and that's when you'll be able to make a diagnosis of high blood pressure. Because once you make the diagnosis of high blood pressure, you commit a patient to lifelong therapy. You don't want to commit a patient who you're not sure that they have high blood pressure. There are different kinds of high blood pressure, if I might say so. There's what we call white coat hypertension, which is high blood pressure when you come to the hospital setting, but at home your blood pressure is well controlled. We think it's mostly related to anxiety. Some people can be very anxious when they come to hospital. So sometimes whenever we see a high blood pressure reading in an office setting without a history of the same, we will do what we call home blood pressure monitoring, or what we call ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, where you give the patient a device and then they go home with it and record it over 24 hours. And then we download the data, and then from that we can be able to determine whether or not you are truly hypertensive.
Okay. The place of diet and exercise in as far as managing hypertension or high blood pressure. You can just touch on that also.
So very important. Lifestyle diseases, lifestyle management is the cornerstone of management. So in terms of diet, as you mentioned, low salt diet, okay? And then just generally a healthy diet with reduced saturated fats, but more of what we call unsaturated fats, which are found in things like nuts, olive oil, avocados, okay? So those ones have healthy fats. And then reduce your carbohydrate intake, mainly for the purposes of reducing your weight gain so that you can maintain a healthy weight, okay? When it comes to exercise, exercise is good for the heart, okay? And exercise is usually in 2 forms. So what we call aerobic exercises and anaerobic exercises. So aerobic exercises are those which will exercise your heart and your lungs. So things like swimming, jogging, brisk walks, skipping rope, those ones would be what we call aerobic exercises. Then anaerobic exercises would be more of with your muscle, so focusing more on weightlifting. Whenever you're focusing on exercise, you want to combine both, because you don't want to lose weight and lose muscle. So even as you lose the fat, you also want to build your muscle, okay? But all these things must be done with the help of the physiotherapist or exercise specialist and your physician. Because if a patient comes with very high pressures of 200, you don't want to tell that person to exercise. It's most likely that they will develop a complication. So you want to first bring the blood pressures down, and then you can allow them to exercise, whatever fits their lifestyle.
Okay. Last but not least, I know last time you did give us these numbers, but it doesn't harm to repeat them again. People need to know, what is the circumference for men, especially when it comes to your midsection, for men to maintain and for women to maintain, and that in itself still works for high blood pressure, just as it works for any other lifestyle disease. Yeah.
So for men, 102 or less centimeters circumference, and for ladies, 88 centimeters or less.
Okay. Yes. BMI, that one now depends on your height and all those things. Okay, so is there anything that maybe we've not talked about in as far as the issue of the hypertension, high blood pressure, that you think like maybe you can have a word out there?
Screening. I think I would encourage the population to be screened for their pressure measurements. Every time you visit a clinic, whether it's for yourself or to take a relative, just have your blood pressure checked. Yeah, you might be shocked that your blood pressure is actually elevated.
Just like you've rightly put it, screening, the health checks once a year. People are always told that, but I think we take it easy, like, oh, I'm not feeling any pain. And just like we've said, high blood pressure is a silent killer. It doesn't show any symptoms, you don't feel any pain and probably until it is too late. So just as Dr. Nicola Okech has said, do pay attention and do have at least your checkups once a year. So thank you so much for tuning in and being with us in the program. Remember, if you've missed any part of this program, you can always tune in to our YouTube channel. You can also go to our Facebook, that is KBC Channel 1 TV, and you'll be able to watch the whole program. So thank you so much for taking the time. Until next time, I'm Marie Yam.